Hello and welcome to Ride Rescue. In this episode of the Buick build, I want to talk about the interior that I decided to do. I changed my mind a couple of times, but before I can put the interior in, I need to get in the carpet, and before I can put in the carpet, I need to put in all the wiring. I've got a lot of wiring that I want to hide underneath the carpet, as well as I want to hide a stereo underneath the seat, and I also want to convert the car over to power windows. And you may have noticed that I shaved the door handles off of the doors, so I need to put in some door pops. So I've got to upgrade a lot of the wiring that goes inside the dash. It's not a heavy enough gauge. I could easily overload it, so I'm going to run wires directly to the battery and directly to the alternator. I changed the alternator from a standard alternator to a 100 amp alternator, so it'll push more power. So by having that extra amperage, I'll be able to run the power windows, the door pops, a high-end stereo system, and not risk overloading wires inside the dash. There was one wire that went from the battery over the radiator and along the fender well, and that powered the power top to the car as well as most of the dash. And the main wire that went through the dash was melted. So it's running a real high risk of burning the car down. So I wanted to redo a lot of those wires and then put in some really good fuses in line going from the battery, and then a fuse again before it went into the dash, as well as underneath the floor where I'm running a fairly large amperage cable to the stereo system. I wanted to make sure there was a 100 amp fuse for that cable before it even entered the car, and then again at the tail end of the car before it powered the stereo system. So I wanted to have an OEM look for the power windows. I wanted it to look like it came from the factory that way. This car originally came with crank windows. I bought a set of power windows from a 66 Chevelle, and I was real excited. I got them. I knew I was going to have to do some modifications to them. I was going to have to clean them up. A couple of the motors were frozen. Like many things that you buy on eBay, they look really good in the picture, and then you get them and they are just a mess. The switches looked really good. The guy said they were good. The switches were bad. The wiring was bad. The two of the motors were burned up and had to be replaced. I spent a lot of money on this whole setup to be OEM, and I was going to have to spend a whole lot more money to restore it and get it to work out correctly and smoothly in the car. So I was honest about it. I put it back on eBay. I took really good pictures. I did a really good description on it. I sold it for a fraction of what I paid for it. So I started shopping for an aftermarket. So the aftermarkets were intriguing. There was a lot of good feedback from them. $750 for a complete kit for this car. The kit came with a rubber tube that all the wiring went through from the kick panel to the door, and it was a piece of rubber hose with some grommets on the end. It was ugly. You can buy the factory original General Motors replacement pieces for that rubber hose and the flex that runs and hides all those wires. So I bought those and tossed the hose type terrible pieces that came with the kit. The switches are beautiful aftermarket switches that look just like the factory originals. The wiring, in order to get it through that hole into the door, I had to take apart on the driver's side the main block, because there was all those wires to run all the windows in that block, and I couldn't get it through the hole. And the way the wiring harness was made up, it should have had a connection on the other end so you could disconnect it, but they put it all together in one piece. So I had to pull all those wires out. So I took a picture of that bracket before I pulled out all the wires so I could make sure to get them all back in place again. And it wasn't that bad. Once I got all the wiring in and all the windows in and all the motors, everything in for the power windows, I ran them up and down, and it was close to the factory originals, but the motors that were in there, their little round motor was different from the factory original GM motors. The GM motors have a lot more torque. This didn't have quite as much torque. That last little bit to get the windows all the way up, you'd have to help them. So I had a switch on all 4 door panels so that you could literally stand there and pull it up. When the top was up on the car, it was even harder to get it all the way up. So it wasn't as good as I would have liked it. But most of the guys I ended up talking to later that had power windows in their cars, the factory originals were getting weak and they had to help them up too. So it kind of resembled the original. Well, now with the windows all finished and tested, I needed to move on to the door pops. Once I had covered up my door mechanism, I wanted to keep the factory original door latches. In order to pull those door latches so that it releases the door, the solenoid to pull those, there's a lot of different solenoids on the market, and the first couple of solenoids I tried, they didn't have the power to pull that latch. That latch is pretty strong. And the way it mounts is you would mount the solenoid somewhere on the door panel free from all of the window mechanism, and it pulls on a cable or a bar, and it will yank and pull that lever, which is the lever that goes to the actual latch, the door mechanism on the door handle. You can rig it up to the side of the door handle to pull too, but that was a little more difficult. I ended up finding some solenoids that were 45-pound pull, and it ended up being just the right amount of pull and strength to release that latch. It's kind of funny because I hooked it up to the same bar that the handle would go to, so when you hit the remote control, it would pull that handle up. It looked like it was lifting the handle, but the spring mechanism that was in that handle didn't have enough power to actually hold it down, so it would kick it up. And the way I set it up, I set the system up with an alarm system, and I used door pops that would normally unlock the car doors. I used those sensors to trigger the solenoids, and it would lift up the handles. So you click the remote once and it opened the driver's side. You double click it twice and it would pop open the passenger side. And I believe you hit it 3 times, or there was some other way of doing it. It would open both doors at the same time. Well, once I got that alarm system in, then I was able to use a trunk pop with that same remote. You held down the unlocking mechanism for 3 seconds and the trunk would pop open. So that worked out really well, but wiring, oh man, what a lot of work to wire all that up. Well, the way the trunk was set up with my automatic power trunk pull down, I was able to also link up a alarm wire so that if anybody pried the trunk open, it would set off the alarm too. So there was some extra wiring there, with some extra features of that original Cadillac pull down and trunk lid pop system that I was able to tie into the alarm system. And then on the front of the engine bay, I was able to put a sensor on top of the core support that I could actually alarm and arm the hood being closed too. So if I was at a car show and I didn't want anybody messing around underneath my engine compartment, I could close that and set the alarm. And even with the top down, as long as nobody opened the door or opened up the hood, the alarm system was fine. And then as a safety mechanism, to take it one step further, I put in a full power shutoff that I could turn off all the power in the car, but leave the power to the alarm system, so that I could still open the doors with the key fob, I could open the trunk, and I could disable the car from being able to be started. So that was just another added feature that I could get out of the alarm system that really functioned well. So now I've got all those wires in, I've got all my alarm system wires in, I'm running wires on top of wires, I'm trying to keep it all organized, I'm putting it into some nice harnesses that run underneath the carpet. In the console, I decided to go with the console for the car. I was really wanting an original Buick console, and I just couldn't find one that was in any decent condition. So with my car, since I was shopping, trying to figure out what to do, I thought about building a custom console. And then I noticed they were doing an aftermarket remanufacture of the 68, 69 center console with the horseshoe handle grip. And I had a 69 Camaro when I was in high school that had that same style console. And I always loved that shifter. Well, down the middle of the 68 console was brushed aluminum look, or brushed stainless steel look. The dashboard on this car is also brushed stainless steel. So I tied all that together. So it just seemed like a perfect fit for my car to have that console. And then in addition to that, having that shifter, you could get a kit for that shifter that would switch it over to a 4-speed automatic, an overdrive. So you could have the D with the circle around it, and it had all the shifting and the shifting mechanisms and the steps that would work with the 204R that I was planning on putting in the car. So to me, it was just a no-brainer. There was some guys at car shows that kind of chuckled and ribbed me a little bit about putting a Chevelle console in the car, but I had GTO bucket seats, and a Chevelle console, and a 70 GS steering wheel. The car wasn't going to be factory, and there was just some subtle hints of the late 60s era that just all work together really well, so why not? Besides, it's my car. So inside of that console, when you open it up, there was a flat panel there that I wanted to run the wires to so that I could put in some toggle switches, and I wanted to switch to run my halo headlights. So I put that in, and then next to that, I put in a switch for the stereo system so I could turn the stereo system on and off. The third switch over, I put in a switch so that I could deactivate the air compressor. Because when you turn on the key switch, I had that to where it was always on. Turn on the car, it turns on the air compressor, and the air compressor runs until it builds up enough pressure that it shuts itself off. I wanted to be able to deactivate that just with a flip of a switch. And then with the bank of the 3 switches underneath that, I put in one power switch that you would just punch that's a clicker switch that would open the power trunk. So that was really nice to be able to have that right there in the armrest and have it hidden out of sight. So in the back well, where I had the pump, the air compressor, and all the valves, there was still enough room there where I could put in an amp system and some speakers. So I started, my gears were going, and I'm thinking, well, maybe if I change how that's all mounted, I wanted to put up a board across the back panel there where I could hide my air compressor, and I could still expose that stainless steel tank that it holds the pressurized air, and the 5-gallon air tank would still be right below that panel and somewhat exposed. I could just kind of work around it, and then I could put some kind of upholstery on that matched the interior of the car, and then on the back side of that I'd be able to put on my amp. So maybe if I got an attractive amp that it could be exposed and I could see it. And then on the inside of that panel, I'd be able to hold a high farad capacitor so that I could have that punch for the deep, heavy basses that I want to use on the speakers, and put in another sub-type speaker. And then on the back side of that too, hidden with everything else, I'd be able to put some speakers down in that back well, where I could have the speakers for the back seat, and then I could put 2 speakers either at the kick panels or at the door panels. I didn't really want them in the door panels. Somebody had put them there somewhere years ago, and I didn't exactly want to put them back in there. I wanted to put them in the kick panels. You can get kick panel kits for those, but they seem a little intrusive. They get out into the footwell. So I was still tossing around those ideas at this point as to where all my speakers are going to be. But for the most part, the amplifier, the speakers, the capacitor, all the main wiring was going to be in that back area, just where the convertible top folds down in. So I need to plan that all out so that when the top's down, it doesn't interfere with the top or damage the back window. So in this back area is where I branched off so I could run some of the wiring to the trunk area and put some fuses back here. Again, try to prevent the car from burning down if something was to short out with that large cable. There's a lot of amperage there. It can build a fire pretty quickly. And with it all hidden behind a panel, there's no real easy way to put that out. So I wanted to be absolutely sure that if there was a short, it was going to kick that fuse, and then all I could do is crawl in and fix whatever issue there is and put another fuse in it. So with all the majority of the wiring now underneath the carpet, on the passenger side, I ran all the speaker wires that was planning on being for the front and the speaker wires for the back, as well as all the speakers to the stereo. And under the front seat, I mounted a stereo, a Sony stereo system that I could run off of Bluetooth. And then I could hook up my cell phone or an iPod and plug it into a little cable that came out of the side of the seat. And I could plug my phone directly into it, or I could just run my Bluetooth to that stereo. And it had a Sony app on my phone where I could control the stereo from the app. So I could hide it underneath the seat and I wouldn't have to touch it. Once I got everything all programmed and set up, I could activate everything from my phone. I could run the volume up and down. I could change just different accessories. I could change songs. I could change from FM. I never put an antenna in the car, so I didn't have any intention on doing FM. But by putting in an iPad, I could put in a whole list of songs and a DJ type setup and just let it play. So it turned out to be a great system. So originally the seats that I purchased for this car, I bought them off of an online classified ad. They were a 66 GTO seat. The fabric was destroyed. The foam was in pretty good shape. So trying to decide what I wanted the interior to look like, and I'm trying to keep the cost down. I've already got a lot of money into this car, so I'm on a tight budget. I decided to go with a 68 GTO seat. The pad, you can buy a kit, and I really like the woven look. It looked like a woven material in the seat cushion center in the back with the vinyl around the sides. It was a very attractive looking seat. So I ordered me a set, Legendary Interiors, has all different kinds of kits. I could get a kit for the 68 and 67 bucket seats, and then they had a similar kit for the back seat. It'd have to be modified a little bit, but a good friend of mine has an upholstery shop. It's R&M, Rick and Mike Alstrom's upholstery shop in Salt Lake City. He could do the back seat for me, modify that, so I could buy the kit and they would have the exact same inserts, and then we would do something custom for the door panels. There was actually some door panels that I could buy for a GM A-body convertible that would match the same type of materials that were used in that 68 GTO. So there were some options, some lower end cost options that I could do on the car. So I thought I'll start with the kits to do the seats. I did the bucket seats and I bought all the material for the rear seat. I put all the material, spent hours putting all these front seats together, and then I set them out into the sun so that it would heat up, and then I could massage and manipulate the foam all underneath it to get them just perfectly smooth. And they look gorgeous. I had them exactly the way I wanted them. Well, I leave them out in the sun just a little bit longer, and then they'll stretch a little bit, and the bolsters and the edges will round a little bit more, and then I can put them in the car, and I'm going to take it to a car show. I'm really excited about taking it to a car show that's going to be on this particular weekend. I go out, it's probably only been 15 or 20 minutes to grab the seats to put them into the car, and they completely started to come apart. The material was so poor, and the heat press stamping of that woven look was so poor that it just relaxed and went smooth. The heat stamp look was completely gone. I was sick. So I called Legendary. They said, yeah, the manufacturer, we have had a couple of complaints when they're out in the sun. It's like, well, then why did you sell it? So I had to pull them all off and send them back. So after that, I started looking at other ideas, and then I fell in love with the 66 Chevelle look. I like it's all vinyl. I like the way they were sewn with some lines in it. There was a little button that went in the back. It had complete 66 Chevelle restoration look for these seats. So I bought that kit and I got the seats all put together. And I just wasn't happy with them. I wanted something custom. I wanted the center of these seats to be more of a fabric or a suede look to make it look more like leather. I wanted more of a custom look. So I'm still looking at different ideas. At this point I decided, okay, we'll just put the seats in. Let's take it to the car show. All they had was the front bucket seats in. No door panels, no back seat, no roof whatsoever, no framework or anything. I parked it on the grass under a tree, opened the engine bay. So I really enjoyed the car show, talking about my car, talking about the bumpers, how they were tucked, the unique paint job, especially the fade as it come down around the bottom. When you get it out into the sunlight and you get it in the right shade, it just acts differently, and there's different light and how it attracts to the bottom, and it just gets that color change from the top down to the bottom. It was a nice conversation piece. I didn't expect to win any awards, but by the time the show was over and they're announcing the awards, my car was picked for some Sponsor's Choice Award. And in addition to the Sponsor's Choice Award, it was also nominated for Diamond in the Rough, recognized in those 2 awards for the very first time the car was out. So getting back to work on the car, I'm just not happy with the seats. I'm not happy with the style of the 66 Chevelle seat. I want something more custom. And I'm browsing online and I stumble onto a website called TMI Products. And they were doing some really cool things with these A-body seats, where they're putting a higher foam bolster and pulling the material up over, and the inserts were done with custom suede look that I was hoping to have. I wanted to have some black vinyl and then do red stitching, and they were doing that too. So I got in contact with them. They hadn't been in business only for about a year at the time, and I was really excited about some of the things they were doing, and I described my car and I told them what I wanted to do to it, and they were excited about doing that to my car and having it out at the shows that I was planning on attending and getting their name out. So they did a complete custom set for me for my front seats and my back seats, and they did a dark burgundy thread to tie into my paint, and they did a suede insert with kind of a tuck and roll look. And the seats that they were doing at the time, they had done some areas that were just kind of detailed sewn stitching, and I asked them to change that and modify it to look more in the style that I was after, and they were willing to do that for me. And then in addition to that, they didn't have the patterns for a convertible back seat, but they had a regular coupe back seat. So I said, well, just go ahead and do that as a coupe, and then I will have my friend at R&M Upholstery modify that to match, and we'll customize it and try to do some foam and some bolstering and stuff to tie in those seats. So I didn't want to strip all the material off of the 66 seats that I had already done, so I just put those on eBay, and I was surprised how quickly those sold. There was a big demand for that bucket seat. I ended up selling them to a gentleman in Oregon or Washington, I can't remember which, and he was buying them for an El Camino. So they were perfect for that. He didn't have to worry about matching up a back seat. He could do his factory original door panels and put in carpet, and he was ready to go. So I had to start shopping again for another set of bucket seats, and in the classified ads, I ran onto a 67 set of seats in a Impala. And I like the 67 seats better anyways because they have locking backs. And they're a metal back, and they're the metal sides of the bottom, where the 68s are plastic, and where the 66 that I had didn't have a locking back. So I was really excited about getting the locking backs. I went ahead and ordered the TMI Products seats and got them all set up, and so you can see in these pictures, those seats turned out really, really good. So now that I got the front seats in, I've got all the carpet in, the console's in, my buddy's working on the back seat. I drew up some sketches of the door panels for the sides of what I wanted. So he's going to build my door panels for me. I was going to build them myself, but at this point now I'm getting excited. I want to get the car finished. I'm going to be putting the top on. I'm completely rebuilding the top. So I'm going to be so busy doing that, I just decided to have my buddy finish all the interior for me. He's going to do the kick panels. He's going to wrap those in a leather-like material and do the door panels on the back, and there's some armrests in the back. All of those are going to be custom sewn with that burgundy stitch to match the seats. So it really looks good. Can't wait to show that on the future videos. In the next video, I'm going to go through the whole top. I've done a few tops over the years, and I've seen a lot of tops done by pros that aren't perfect, and I was planning on hiring a guy to do my top, and I was just really worried. I'm so picky. I'm so fussy about the top. I've done 6 tops. The last top that I did was a 69 Cadillac, and it looked really good. So I'm pretty comfortable about doing this one. I custom ordered a canvas top. It's just a really luxurious Mercedes-Benz type of a European look. The back window, I really wanted to go with glass, but I wanted to tint it, and I couldn't find anybody that could build a glass window for this particular type of a frame and for that top. But I did find somebody who did the vinyl back window in a dark tint. So I was excited to find that. So that just adds a little bit more of a custom touch to this car. So in the next video, I'll walk you through that whole job. That's a lot of work. And then having to make sure to cover up all the paint, because I'm doing so much work around all that top. I don't want to scratch the paint anywhere, put any dents in the car. I mean, it's a lot of heavy duty work. So thank you for watching my video. Please help me out with a subscribe. If you haven't done it already, hit that subscribe button. Share it with your friends. Tell people about my videos. Give me a thumbs up. Every little bit helps to keep my channel going, and so I can keep building on more and more content. I've got a lot more videos that I'm working on that I have in planning, so really appreciate you watching. TTFN. Ta-ta for now.